see that our view, or at least the photos of us, are much nicer than that crew down there, don't you think? We're looking pretty sharp. I don't know what's going on.
You do look sharp.
Hey, look, you guys look a little dull down there. The color here is much better.
We're hydrated. Yeah. Why'd you stay up there? You should have come down here. We'd have looked sharper.
Yeah.
I think we have purposely put our pictures on the long view so that they can't.
I see that. We can barely recognize you guys.
Peter, they told me that you would have gotten free water had you come down here.
This is your bottle.
Yeah, and there's 2 extra right here for you and Chris.
If you recall, John, I was de facto purchaser for all the water for a number of meetings.
That's true.
Well, I just took over for you, Peter, so I'm.
There you go,
free
Brian.
water. Yeah, I think that comes with the chairmanship.
Yes.
You have to buy water for it.
Oh, Barry ever swung them for water.
Okay, Rob, we're live.
All right?
Yep.
New York Racing Parimutuel Wagering and Breeding Law, Section 102, provides that the New York State Gaming Commission shall consist of 7 members appointed by the governor by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. 4 members confirmed by the New York State Senate are necessary to afford the commission an ability to establish a quorum and undertake action. This present meeting of the commission is now called to order. Please note that this meeting is being conducted by video conferencing in 2 locations, New York and Schenectady. Both locations have been appropriately noticed and accommodate public attendance. Ms. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
John Crotty,
Here.
Peter Machete,
Here.
Brian O'Dwyer,
Present.
Christopher Riano,
Here.
Marissa Shorenstein, here, Jerry Skurnick.
Here.
Ms. Secretary, please have the record reflect that a quorum of qualified members are present, thus enabling the transaction of business. Please note that Commissioners Machete and Riano are in Schenectady. Bilateral, visual, and oral communications between the 2 meeting locations has been established.
Minutes of the Commission's meeting conducted on January 17th, 2023 have been provided to the members in advance. At this time, I'd like to ask the members, are there any edits, corrections, amendments, anything? Hearing none, Ms. Secretary, please note that let the record reflect that the minutes were accepted. As I have asked in the past, I now call on our executive director to make his report.
Thank you, sir. Since we've last met, there have been a few developments within our industry that I would like to share. First regards the request for applications process. The additional commercial casinos process request for application deadline for the round 1 of questions by interested parties was February 3rd of earlier this month. The Gaming Facility Location Board received several hundred questions. Staff will be reviewing the material for duplicate submissions and drafting proposed responses for board consideration, approval, and publication. It is expected that the response process will take another 3 weeks. Upon the publication, interested parties will have 4 weeks to submit questions for round 2. Also, I want to point out that the governor's executive budget was introduced on February 1st. At a functional level, there were 5 items of interest to the commission. Several items were reintroductions of annual legislative proposals, such as extending various expiring provisions of the Racing Parimutuel Wagering and Breeding Law, continuing Capital Region Off-Track Betting Corporation's access to capital acquisition funds, and seeking of elimination of the square footage requirement for offering of quick draw. Some are also new, such as effectuating a wind down and closure of the Catskill Off-Track Betting Corporation, and authorizing the New York Racing Association to access funds and enter into an agreement with the state for the repayment of such funds for the renovation of Belmont Park. These items may all be found in the Article 7 legislation, which is Senate 4009, Assembly 4009, at Parts X through Parts AA. There is also an annual appropriation to the Commission for our operations. The legislation and appropriations material have been previously circulated, and as with past years, Deputy Executive Director Stephen Lowenstein is available at your individual conveniences to discuss any of the financial questions that you might have. Lastly, the former New York State Racing and Wagering Board revoked the thoroughbred trainer's license of Richard E. Dutrow Jr. on October 12th, 2011, imposed an ineligibility to apply for any license for 10 years, and fined him $50,000. Mr. Dutrow administratively and judicially contested the penalties, which resulted in the penalty imposition commencing on January 17th of 2013. Having already finished or satisfied his fine, Mr. Dutrow's term of revocation ended on January 17th, 2023. Mr. Dutrow recently applied for a thoroughbred trainer's license, which was reviewed by the Bureau of Licensing in consultation with the Division of Racing. Review found that Mr. Dutrow satisfied the penalty imposed by the Racing and Wagering Board, and his record is bereft of transgressions during his period of revocation. Accordingly, the Bureau has determined to issue a license to Mr. Dutrow to participate in New York horse racing. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Any of the commissioners have questions or comments on our executive director's report?
No.
Nope, hearing none. We'll go on. Item 4 is rulemaking. New York State Racing Power Mutual Wagering Breeding Law 104.19 authorizes the Commission to promulgate rules and regulations that it deems necessary to carry out its responsibilities. To that regard, the Commission will from time to time promulgate rules and rule amendments pursuant to the State Administrative Procedure Act. To date, we have one rule for adoption consideration and one rule proposal for consideration. Mr. Williams.
For Commission consideration is the adoption of regulations to govern advertising by lottery courier services. The proposal aims to prevent false, deceptive, or misleading advertising, such as stating or implying that a customer may play the lottery through the courier services platform or purchase a lottery ticket directly from the courier service. A courier service instead may market its actual services, fulfilling orders for the purchase of lottery tickets from licensed lottery sales agents and delivering tickets to the customer. In addition, the proposed rule would require problem gambling assistance messaging, similar to advertising requirements for casinos. The courier service would be required to submit draft advertisements to the Commission at least 15 days prior to publication or other dissemination. The Commission staff would have 10 days to determine whether the draft complies with the regulations, and, if the draft does not, prohibit publication or dissemination of the proposed advertisement. The notice of proposed rulemaking was published in the December 14th, 2022 State Register, meaning the public comment period expired on February 13th, 2023. 3 public comments were received. 2 from the Commission's current lottery courier service licensees, Jackpocket and Lotto.com, and 1 from Brianna Dura, an interested party. Jackpocket generally objected to the entirety of the proposed regulations, asserting that, quote, a new way to play is exactly what the lottery courier service provides, end quote, and that in authorizing lottery courier services, the Commission was aware that it was establishing a new method for playing the lottery and regulated with that goal in mind. Jackpocket argued that a new convenient way to play for everyone to play the lottery is an accurate description, and that describing yourself as a digital lottery courier does not properly address the underlying lottery gaming activity taking place. Jackpocket also asserted that the proposed rules would be confusing to customers in light of references to the lottery player in Commission Rules 5041.7 and 5041.8. Jackpocket also stated that precluding a licensed lottery courier from solicitations of playing the lottery are an unnecessary overreach that will lead to unintended consequences and unfavorable economic conditions. Jackpocket also asserted that the end effect would be less participation in the lottery system and suggested clarifying language around the issue would be more transparent than prohibiting the use of a single word. Staff disagrees. Jackpocket's objection to the proposed rule provides the point that the proposed rule is well-founded, as they argue that misleading its customers about the nature of its services by advertising play and jackpots on your phone is effective and desirable to generate revenue. Under the existing lottery courier regulations, a licensed lottery courier service takes orders from customers, fulfills them, and delivers or cashes winning tickets on the customer's behalf. A lottery courier service customer never purchases a ticket on the customer's phone. Rather, the purchase occurs only when the lottery courier service, in turn, proceeds to purchase a ticket on the customer's behalf from a licensed New York lottery sales agent, just as the purchase occurs with any other lottery player who purchases directly from a sales agent. If a lottery courier service customer purchases services from a phone and the lottery courier service fails to produce or proceed to purchase the ticket on the customer's behalf, in no sense has the customer ever played the New York lottery. The courier service customer becomes a lottery player only when the customer's ticket has been purchased on the customer's behalf. The order occurs on the customer's phone. Lottery play does not occur on the customer's phone. The existing lottery courier service regulations were thoughtfully and carefully drafted to make clear the distinction between the ordering of lottery courier services and actual lottery play, which occurs only when a lottery ticket is actually purchased. Staff had critical concerns that a customer might falsely believe that the customer had purchased a lottery ticket, in other words, played the lottery, when the customer places an order from the lottery courier services on a mobile device. Accordingly, the existing rules in Part 5014 are intended to make clear to the licensed lottery courier services and customers that the purchase of a lottery ticket, the playing of a lottery ticket, does not occur with the placing of a lottery courier service order. This proposed rule is meant, in part, to ensure truthful transparency about the nature of the order transaction and to mitigate the reputational harm to the New York Lottery brand if, for example, a lottery courier service customer placed an order before an especially lucrative jackpot such as Mega Millions or Powerball, yet the lottery courier service failed to follow through and purchase the ticket. The customer has not, in fact, played the lottery for that drawing. If the customer is enticed to play the lottery on the customer's phone, and the customer's ordered numbers are drawn, yet the ticket had not been purchased by the courier service, the customer would likely feel cheated, and the reputational harm to the New York Lottery would be significant. Jackpocket's advertising seems to mislead customers in precisely that manner, into thinking that the customer plays the lottery on the customer's mobile phone, when in fact the customer merely requests a ticket through the phone and plays the lottery only when the ticket purchase is effectuated. This risk of harm to the New York Lottery is at least mitigated if a courier service is prohibited from advertising itself as something that it is not. Jackpocket's assertion that the Commission intended to create a new way to play the lottery is inaccurate. Part 5014 of the Commission's regulations aims to make clear the distinction between what a lottery service does and what the Commission and its licensed sales agents do, which are different roles. The reference to player in existing Commission rules 5014.7 and 5014.8 are accurate. The lottery courier service customer becomes a lottery player, but only when the customer's lottery ticket is actually purchased, and not when the purchase is merely ordered from a lottery courier service. Lottery courier services are go-betweens between a lottery player and the licensed lottery sales agent who sells the ticket. Any lottery courier service advertisement that entices a customer by stating or implying that the customer plays the lottery on their phone is false, deceptive, and misleading. Given our articulated concerns, staff has requested Jackpocket cease certain of its advertising that we believe is false, deceptive, and misleading. Jackpocket has declined, citing the lack of a specific regulation prohibiting such. This proposal supplies such regulation. Lottery.com stated that it supports the desire to protect the public from false, deceptive, and misleading advertising, but believes that existing rules and practices are sufficient, citing current Rule 5014.17 concerning advertising and marketing. The Commission's lottery service license application requirement to disclose marketing plans, and the Commission's ability in current Rule 5014.20A1 to suspend or revoke a license for conduct inconsistent with the public interest. Lotto.com objected to the proposed rule requiring submission of proposed advertisements for Commission review prior to public dissemination. Lotto.com also stated that a jackpot may be fleeting and therefore it may not have the ability to review and respond to marketing requests in a timely manner. Lotto.com also objected to the proposed requirement to submit samples of advertisements within 5 days of use and to the proposed retention requirements for advertising. Lotto.com also asserted that the Commission does not require anything comparable for licensed lottery retail sales agents who largely remain free to advertise in an unfettered manner. Finally, Lotto.com asserted that there is no rational basis for treating lottery retail license advertising and courier license advertising differently. Staff notes that licensed lottery courier services are not licensed lottery sales agents. As explained in response to Jackpocket's objections, a courier service is fundamentally different enterprise than a lottery sales agent. Lottery sales agents do not pose the same risk that lottery courier services do of potentially misleading the public as to the nature of the services provided. Staff is also unaware of any instances of false, deceptive, or misleading advertising by licensed lottery agents. The difference in risk, actual in the case of a lottery courier service advertising and non-existent in the case of lottery sales agency advertising, justifies different regulatory treatment. Staff also believes that uncontroversial compliant advertising from the limited number of lottery licensed courier services could be reviewed and approved promptly. Furthermore, staff will be prepared to issue blanket pre-approvals of advertising using the same or similar wording as a proffered exemplar, but would reserve the right to disapprove proposed advertising using new words, phrases, or images that would mislead the public. Finally, the pre-approval process is intended to benefit the licensed lottery courier services. Without it, a licensee would be at the risk of fines, suspensions, or license revocation for a violation of Commission regulations, which would be more inconvenient for the licensee than the approval process. Staff believes that the advertising submission process would foster cooperation between the Commission and the lottery courier service licensees to ensure false, deceptive, or misleading advertising is stopped before it results in sanctions for the licensee and confusion to the public. Finally, Brianna Dura commented that the Commission, or commended the Commission for designing and deploying such an impressive and robust infrastructure and process for licensure of lottery courier services, stating that the proposed Rule 5014.17E3 is very important because ensuring truth and transparency in advertising is crucial in a quest to properly combat problematic gambling. However, Dura stated that the marketing restrictions in the proposed Rule 5014.17F, for example, prohibiting the use of the word play in connection with lottery courier services, is potentially worrisome in that, in Dula's opinion, courier service customers are in fact engaging in the legal gambling and playing the lottery. Dura asserted that the terminology of play the lottery is ubiquitous, and any variation thereof could lead to confusion by the public. Additionally, Dura stated that it would seem a bit contradictory that the courier services be promoting things such as responsible play if the courier services be promoting things such as responsible play if they weren't communicating with their customers playing the lottery through their service. Dura supported the requirement to publish the problem gambling helpline and in such a manner that it makes it prominent, indicating that it is essential to stakeholders within the gaming ecosystem to do their part to inform the greater, wider public that help and hope exists. Finally, Dora stated it is critical that the customer understands that they are in fact gambling and playing the lottery, even when utilizing a courier service. Staff believes Dora misunderstands the difference between requesting the purchase of a lottery ticket and playing the lottery when a purchase is effectuated, precisely what this proposal aims to address. Staff agrees that the responsible gaming messaging is appropriate, as proposed in these rules, based on a lottery courier service's role in, as Dora puts it, the gaming ecosystem, but it does not follow that the lottery courier service customer is playing the lottery by virtue of requesting the purchase of a lottery ticket. The responsible gaming messaging accomplishes its purposes in connection with lottery courier services without misleading a customer about the nature of the courier services themselves. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt this rulemaking.
Commissioners, do we have any questions and comments in regard to this rule?
I would like to make a couple comments.
Commissioner Crotty.
When we were asked to approve this regulation back, I don't remember the year, Rob, do you?
Offhand, I don't.
I don't remember. Several years ago, like more than 5 years ago?
Probably around 5.
5 years ago?
A little less.
A little less, yeah, okay. I had great reservation about it because it didn't make sense to me why we were regulating these people that quasi really shouldn't be able to do, their business models shouldn't work. The fact now that we have issues with the language and can't effectively regulate it, and that they've extended what might be, appropriate language to describe their services, it just highlights my original, fears with regulating this thing in the beginning. I'm going to vote no on the language, and I really would ask that we consider whether or not we should rescind those regulations we put out in the beginning, because I'm not entirely clear that these services are in the best interest of the people of the state, and I think we should ask a more formal body to opine as to what they think versus interpreting this by ourselves. The executive director's made it very clear that they're going to exist one way or the other, or that's his opinion. I don't want to misstate it. But, as we move forward, I don't think this regulatory scheme is one that works very well at all. And the language stuff just highlights that problem more. And I was told today that of the, however many thousand kiosks that we have out there, these guys represent some of the biggest ones in the state. So at this point now, you're also creating a new paradigm within your existing dealer network that feels unfair to me.
Thank you. Commissioners? Either of you?
No.
No? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We will take a vote. May I have a motion to adopt the rule?
So moved.
Mr. Skurnick, may I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
All right, the motion is adopted with one opposition. 5-1. Okay.
As an administrative note, please be advised that SGC 5022-000009P, purchase location requirements for lottery courier services, has also come off of public notice. Staff continues to review and analyze the comments that are received within that. Those were rules that you both proposed at the same time. One is just simply a little behind the other because of the depth of the comments that came in.
Can you just give us another update on that, Mr. Executive Director? I'm not sure I remember the thrust of the other.
Sure, there were two elements. One was on the advertising, the other was on ensuring the location of the sales of the tickets to ensure that they're appropriate and consistent with New York law in large measure. So one puts in an affirmative obligation on the entity that's purchasing or that's selling the tickets at that point. So what this will do is add a geolocation or a location requirement for the purchases of those tickets that are occurring through the lottery courier services. The comments on that were a little deeper, I
Well,
think.
to elaborate a little bit on that, yeah, there are two aspects. We do currently have geolocation requirements when someone tries to order a ticket through their phone through one of these courier services. The question arose, though, about the funding of future purchases. So whether someone needed to be in New York State or not, if they wanted to continue on an ongoing basis the purchase of tickets. And there were concerns raised about if someone ordered a series of tickets in New York and that subscription would end and then left the state and wanted to fund the purchase of future tickets while they're no longer in New York. And we're still working through the federal law aspects of that and what might
Almost
might
like your
not be
credit
permitted.
card on file with when I run out, just re-up me even though I might be out of state or out of country.
So that's the subtlety that we're analyzing.
Okay. All right, will that be on for the next meeting or the meeting after?
Hopefully the next meeting.
Okay. All right, next regulation, Mr. Williams.
For commission consideration of proposed rules to regulate sports wagering, advertising, marketing, and promotion. Concerns have been expressed at several commission meetings, specifically regarding advertising and marketing of sports wagering at college and university campuses, and generally regarding promotional language. Since the commencement of mobile sports wagering, commission staff have consciously monitored marketing and advertising practices of our licensed operators. We maintain review of the advertisements for the purposes of ensuring that they contain mandatory problem gambling messaging and that the language of the advertisements is not misleading. We are cognizant, however, that sports wagering, marketing, and advertising has come under increased scrutiny. In fact, New York State Senators Leroy Comrie and Luis Sepulveda have introduced legislation that would require all advertisements for gambling to include warnings about the potential harmful and addictive effect of gambling and should only be consumed by and marketed to adults. We also note that U.S. Representative Paul Tonko, who represents New York's 20th Congressional District, proposed legislation in Congress that would prohibit advertising of sports books on any medium of electronic communication subject to the jurisdiction of the Federal Communications Commission. Given Chairman O'Dwyer's publicly raised concerns, staff re-examined the issue and proposes a package of rules that would, among other things, firmly establish licensee responsibility for the content of their advertising, marketing, and branding, prohibit false and deceptive and misleading statements, require marketing and promotions to clearly and conspicuously disclose material facts, terms, and conditions to potential customers, require an opt-out functionality to block receipt of future direct advertisements, prohibit designs aimed to appeal primarily to underage persons, prohibit advertising to target audience that is reasonably foreseeable to comprise underage persons, and prohibit advertising on college and university media. Elements of the proposal are derived from the American Gaming Association's Responsible Marketing Code for Sports Wagering and from sports wagering advertisement regulations from other states such as Arizona, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Virginia. While the package may not address all commission concerns, staff believes it is a good starting point and recommends that the commission propose this rulemaking.
I had placed that discussion on mobile sports wagering advertising under old business in item 5, but since this is really addressing that, it seems appropriate that we have that discussion in the context of the staff rule proposal. Do any of the commissioners want to comment or discuss the staff rule proposal on wagering? I have a couple of comments, but I'll reserve mine till everybody else is done. Anybody? Nope.
I think what you've done is a good thing. And I think it's worth noting you were sort of pushing this and sort of the reason this is here. I think it's a good outcome. So thank you.
Thank you. After 1 year, it's obvious that the introduction of legal online sports wagering has been a net positive to the people of New York. In that time, over $900 million has been added to the New York State's revenue, and the profits from this activity no longer fuel organized crime. However, the Commission is also cognizant that along with the success comes the potential for problem gambling, irresponsible placing of wagers. This is especially true in young men and women whose interest in college and professional sports is oftentimes coupled with gaming activity. Already, our commission staff works to assure that only those wages that are not subject to manipulation are allowed. The regulations proposed today by our staff are potentially an important first step in achieving these objectives. I know all my fellow commissioners will review the comments from all the stakeholders, as will I. After 1 year, it is particularly incumbent on us to understand both the successes and problems engendered by this legislation. After further review, we find additional steps are necessary to achieve the goals of our legislative mandate. They will, of course, be considered. I am satisfied that the proposed regulations are an important initial step in addressing the concerns of the commissioners regarding the targeting of colleges' campuses for the promotion of mobile sports wagering. I want to thank our staff, our executive director, and our legal staff, our general counsel, for their work in developing these proposed regulations, especially in light of their tremendous workload these days in developing criteria for the site selection committee. I also want to thank Commissioner Skurnick for his initial bringing this matter to our attention. Having said that, is we ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It carries unanimously.
I think for the notes, it's fair to say Jerry proposed it.
I think you're absolutely correct.
Hearing no objection.
Yeah. Thank you. The next is the matter of the adjudication of scheduled matters. Today we have two matters for adjudication. Mr. Williams.
On October 19th, 2022, the Bureau of Licensing issued a notice of license suspension to Sarah A.M. Deli and Grocery Corp., which conducts business on Locust Street in Mount Vernon. The notice informed Sarah A.M. Deli of the suspension for engaging in conduct that constitutes fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, or conduct prejudicial to the public confidence in the state lottery. Specifically, the notice stated that the action was taken because the licensee was found to be in possession of untaxed cigarettes. The notice stated that the suspension would continue until Sarah A.M. Deli provided proof of the final disposition of the investigation of the New York Department of Taxation and Finance into the possession of the untaxed cigarettes. Sarah A.M. Deli and Grocery requested a hearing on November 16th, 2022. Taxation and Finance issued its decision revoking Sarah A.M. Deli's certificate of registration as a retail dealer of cigarettes and tobacco and banning reapplication for 1 year from the date of the violations, which was August 4th, 2022. The Commission's hearing was conducted on January 19th, 2023. The hearing officer submitted a report to the Commission Secretary dated February 9th, recommending that Sarah A.M. Deli's lottery agent license be suspended for a period of 1 year, beginning August 24th, 2022. Please note that pursuant to Commission Rule 5000.6D, staff file possible exceptions, objections, and replies to the hearing officer report. The Commission considered this matter at a meeting conducted pursuant to the judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings exemption of New York Public Officers Law, Section 108.1.
The Commission duly deliberated and considered this matter and determined by a 6-0 vote to sustain the hearing officer's report or recommendation, accepting each of the exceptions noted by staff counsel.
Next matter, on August 9th, 2022, the Bureau of Licensing issued a notice of license suspension to Tony's Deli and Grocery 2 Corp., which conducts its business on Walcott Street in Brooklyn. The notice informed Tony's Deli and Grocery of a suspension for engaging in conduct that constitutes a fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, or conduct prejudicial to the public confidence in the state lottery. Specifically, the notice stated that the action was taken because the licensee was found to be in possession of untaxed cigarettes. The notice stated that the suspension would continue for 6 months or until the end of any suspension of Tony's Deli by the New York Department of Taxation and Finance for the possession of untaxed cigarettes and for selling tobacco product without a valid certificate of registration. Tony's Deli and Grocery requested a hearing. A pretrial hearing was conducted on November 10th, and the hearing was conducted on December 8th, 2022. The hearing officer submitted a report to the Commission Secretary dated January 11th, 2023, recommending that Tony's Deli lottery agent license be revoked, with the period of suspension being from August 9th, 2022 through the date of the Commission decision. The Commission considered this matter at a meeting conducted pursuant to the judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings exemption of New York Public Officers Law, Section 108.1.
The Commission duly deliberated and considered the matter, and upon unanimous vote, decided to sustain the hearing officer's report and recommendations. I note that the agenda discussed had on it 0.5 the sports wagering, but we've already taken care of that in terms of the proposed regulations. That concludes today's published agenda. Do we have any comments from any of the other commissioners? If not, I'd like to just give you a quick update of what I've done since the last meeting. The lottery, the largest of the enterprises we oversee, it is important that we periodically look at its operations. Our executive director and I will be conducting complete review of the operations and the promotion of the lottery, and I will report back to the board in the future. We haven't done that, and I think that's really important. The Standard Bread Fund has been able to increase the purses for the participants. I am also really delighted to report to you that the fund has increased the funding for the 4-H youth programs that will benefit youth programs throughout the state, including in the metropolitan area. This year, the fund was able to increase funding from $40,000 to $200,000 as part of a multi-year $1 million program to promote standard breads for the youth of the state through the 4-H. On the Thoroughbred Fund, for the first time, the Thoroughbred Fund was able to host a ceremony to highlight the grants the fund had supported. The fund has been active in supporting aftercare for horses that have reached the end of their racing career, and we were able to keep that funding. Additionally, the fund continues to support the work of the racetrack chaplaincy and the great work they do, and we can hope to be even doing more in the future. The Commission continues to support the work of combating problem gambling. In this regard, I have to acknowledge with thanks the great work of our Executive Director in promoting the Committee on Problem Gambling, as well as working with OASIS to address that problem. In terms of casinos, new casino sightings, I have represented and will represent the Commission in various media and organizations to explain the process as it unfolds. In this regard, I note that I once again report to the Commissioner that the same thing I've been saying for the last few months, which repeatedly is that nobody goes out of this with a preference. Everybody comes in with a tabula rasa, and despite that, I'm sure it will be reported differently when it comes out. But that's the way it goes. And finally, just note that Commissioner Skurnick was recently feted as one of the most outstanding New Yorkers, and he deserves every bit of it. So, thank you for that.
Here, here.
With that, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.